Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Lords of Limited. My name's Ben Warney, and joining me on the line is Ethan. Get in the battle bus, loser. We're going pioneering sacks. I keep getting so many unsolicited Pioneer deck picks, my friend.
Wait, hold on. Last week you told me you're like, I'm excited. You want to talk about Pioneer with me? Yeah, you can talk about Pioneer. So I started sending you stuff. You can't now, you can't now dox me on the podcast about it.
That's just for the content, my friend.
Oh my goodness.
You're welcome to keep sending me Pioneer deck picks. But Smuggler's Copter, baby, you're casting them.
Smuggler's Copter unbanned in Pioneer. Yeah, we thought Appraiser would get banned, thought Karn would get banned. Did not think Smuggler's Copter was getting unbanned. It's a pretty big win for Rakdos Sacrifice and Rakdos decks in general, and like just seeing it everywhere.
And that is what you are presuming you're playing at this point, Rakdos?
I don't know. That's what I'm mostly practicing. I haven't practiced anything else other than flavors of Rakdos. But I'm open to messing around with something else if there feels like there's... The big boogeyman currently feels like Blue-Red Phoenix. I know our listeners and you care so much about this.
Could you see my eyes glazing over
like,
in the Zoom?
You're like, you're not doing this now, are you? But that seems to be the boogeyman. So we'll see if we can combat that. It might have to be a if you can't beat him, join him type thing. But I hope not, because there's something about those. I don't know if you've ever played those kind of decks, the like cantrip. I just am bad
in limited. I enjoy playing them in limited, so I would imagine I would like playing it in constructed.
Yeah, I'm bad at those decks.
Speaking
I don't know why.
of liking playing limited, have you played Festival in a Box Sealed? I did one entry and had a blast. I did not get there, but the format was incredible.
I did more than one entry into Festival in Box, because I guess initially, I don't know if it was they had said you could only enter once or you could only win once, but then they were like, nah, you can do it as many times as you want. Go nuts. So I played 9 times and got the box twice and then got gems back 3 times. So
look at you.
Pretty profitable endeavor. I was so mad. So I got, in classic Ethan fashion, I got Yorion in back-to-back sealed pools.
Oh my god.
And of course, there's no question for me. I'm building, especially out of 9-pack sealed, I'm building a 60-card deck. And my second Yorion deck, I was 5-0 into 5-2. I was like, this is going to be so good for the brand. We're going to tweet this. And then nothing. But yeah, I was surprised at how fun it was. You could also just like go 0-2 or 1-2 pretty fast and lose your gems. And it was a lot of gems. It was like $25 to enter. But it was a really fun sealed format and just really cool to find little pockets of synergy, little cool cross synergies.
Yeah, and it was like seeing old friends also. I was oh, yeah, I remember that comment. That was great. Do you know, I only made it to 4 wins. I was finishing at like 2:30 a.m. last night. But the card I loved playing with that I hadn't played with forever, Hexgold Hoverwings, was an absolute all-star for me. The 4-mana 3/2 for Mirrodin equipment that gives +1/+0 and flying hard carried my pool.
Wow. Did you have other equipment too? Because doesn't it have like a bonus for all equipped creatures you have?
No, just +1/+0 and flying after putting a body on the battlefield was enough. It was outstanding.
Yeah, checks out.
Stole several wins in the air with some Hexgold Hoverwings.
That's awesome.
But yeah, the format was just really, the gameplay was good, and you felt like opening 9 packs, it's hard to not be able to build at least a competitive deck, you know?
Yeah, never in the 9 pools that I feel like I didn't have something that could tussle, despite, you know, some of those pools records saying otherwise.
Just good, clean Magic too, you know? Like you wanted, it was a testament to deck construction. A good, clean Magic?
Yeah, as we're about to talk about the boomerest of boomer sets here in Cons of Tarkir coming back, which I will say I'm going to throw out. I think it's fun. I think it's a good set. I think is wildly overrated personally by someone on this podcast, perhaps. So as you're like, we're returning to good, clean Magic. What is good, clean Magic to you?
Not Lost Caverns of Ixalan. I mean, like, I feel like I'm in every game because I have the tools I need to compete. A level playing field, not rares that end the game coming down on turn 2 or turn 3. Although there are some of those, but your pool is big enough that you also definitely have the interaction if you choose to. And like more than anything, it felt like an exercise in deck building, because like your pool's going to have whatever 30 removal spells in it or something, and like picking the right number of removal and card advantage spells, making sure your curve is right, and that there's a lot of 2-for-1s going on, so you couldn't load up on removal. It was just an interesting thing. And like I said, I only did one, but I had an absolute blast doing it.
Yeah, I had a really interesting pool where I basically I clicked all the black cards that I was interested in playing and had like 5 or 6 slots left. And so I was like, okay, so I can be like really heavy black. Then what am I going to do? I was like, well, I have like a couple bombs in green and a bunch of good green mana dorks, but nothing to ramp to. So that's out. Red is just more removal. That's out. Blue has another rare, but not really good support. And then I ended up, the color I thought I was going to pair with it the least was white. But I was like, no, this actually slots in well, and I can leverage the removal in an aggressive shell. And so they ended up shaving removal spells. It was a really interesting puzzle. Yeah. Very cool.
Cosine would play again.
Sort of nervous. We were just talking about this before the show. Like, haven't heard anything about there being an arena decathlon, and clock's ticking if they were going to do that around the holidays. I'm worried that that's not going to happen again, which is a bummer because it was so fun the past couple of years. And maybe this is like sort of replacing that. I don't know.
But I would like them to run this back on a weekend where I have more time.
Yeah, maybe they'll do that. But I don't know. Maybe they've run out of festivals in a box to give away. Also, a bummer for anyone in the non-US for them to not be able to really play in this event. So if they were to run it back, I would like them to just, make it a top-heavy prize structure, sure, but just do it in gems or something. Like, make it something that everybody can participate in, I would think.
Yeah.
All right, so big news. Khans of Tarkir coming back to Arena this week on Tuesday. And in classic Lords of Limited fashion, we're going to actually welcome it back with the 50 Takes episode. Shout out to Rykor from our Discord who suggested this. And the more I was thinking about it, I was like, yeah, we always talk about these style of episodes as like they're great to return to a format for. So rather than us doing we already sort of did this actually way back in the day, episode 61, Khans of Tarkir, even before Arena. Back in my day, we played on Magic Online, and we did a sort of flashback episode about Khans. And I feel like it would be covering the same kind of ground, like here are the archetypes, some key commons to look out for, etc. I think the 50 Take style episode is going to be a lot more fun, a lot punchier way to get information out to our listeners, to get them prepped for this week and for the Arena Open this weekend.
That's this weekend?
Yeah.
So soon. Can we have just a second?
Nope.
Holy cow. But also, I was going back and looking at that episode. That was like, what, episode 61, I think, or something. Like, some of the things in there, just looking at the cards now, I am just a much better Magic player like 300 episodes later. And I am sure some of the information we put out into the world in episode 61 is not correct.
I haven't gone back, but I would never say that information we put out into the world isn't correct, Ben. We are going to have some solid official power rankings in this 50 Takes episode, and I want everyone to know that there's a big wink, a big grain of salt to be taken with these official power rankings, as we're looking at this set with a bit of rose-colored glasses. And certainly you make a great point, like this was 10 years ago. I think this was 2014. That's when this format came out. Like, we were not good at Magic then. Or I'll say for myself, I was not good at Magic then. Like, I definitely have learned a ton playing as much as we have and podcasting and all that stuff. So I think we'll definitely have some tweaks to bring to folks in the coming weeks. And we are going to be covering Khans pretty much until the end of the year, I think, is our plan.
Yes.
Okay, so let's get some housekeeping stuff out of the way and dive into the takes. First things first is the Patreon page. Patreon.com/Lords of Limited is where folks can go to give back to the show if they so choose. It is the season of giving. You can give to your friends and your family. You can also give to one of your favorite podcasts via the Patreon page. We have some excellent stuff to give to you in return. Via the Patreon, you get access to the Lords of Limited Discord, you get access to the show notes, you get access to the episode a day early, ad-free, and you even get access to monthly coaching sessions with me or Ben, depending on which reward tier you choose to be a part of. So if any or all of that sounds of interest to you, or you just want to show us some love, the Patreon page is the place for you. And this week, we're welcoming our new patrons in Nicholas, Mike, Andrew, Rin, Tyler, DLP, and Marshall. Thank you. We really appreciate your support.
Yeah, cannot say thank you enough. Do you think that is Marshall Sutcliffe? He's finally just decided, Lords of Limited is the GOAT, Magic the Gathering Limited podcast, and I need to be a patron.
I think so.
I,
That's what I assumed.
Show is also brought to you by Cool Stuff Inc. CoolStuffInc.com, best place to go on the internet for anything you need magic related or items that are cool, because they've got cool stuff in stock at CoolStuffInc.com. Maybe you played 10 bullets in the Festival in a Box seal this weekend, and unlike Ethan, you didn't get there on those 2 festivals in a box. Well,
Yikes.
good news for you. CoolStuffInc.com has many of the materials you would need to put your own Festival in a Box together. Just go on over there, dump all that stuff into your shopping cart, put in that checkout code LOL, all caps, for 5% off your order, and you too can be the proud owner of your own homemade Festival in a Box. Who needs a good win rate?
When I was streaming this last night, people were asking, they're like, "Oh, you're going to do this?" I was like, "No, I'm just going to sell it." And like, I'm just doing this as a money thing. And they're like, "No, you have to put it in your closet. That's where sealed product goes." I was like, "Oh, that's a good point."
Those are the rules.
Yeah, those are the
sealed
rules.
Product goes in the closet. It is also Christmas time, the holiday time, depending on how you choose to celebrate the holidays with your families, whether you want to be getting a gift for someone else or a gift for yourself. Please, seriously, go to CoolStuffInc.com and use checkout code LOL, all caps, to get 5% off your order and let them know that we sent you over there.
Purchase 4 copies of Smuggler's Copter and gift them to a Pioneer player near you. They need them now more than ever. Ben, any thoughts, hopes, concerns, questions, comments before we dive into the 50 takes?
About cons?
Life in general, the holiday, whatever. It's your podcast, you know?
I am very excited to talk about Cons of Tarkir, and I will not say anything about another format that we may not be discussing quite as often.
Here's my question for you is, are you ready for big data to come to one of your favorite formats?
No. I am very concerned about that. But I will say the data has never stopped me before, and I will probably just not look at it and just put my fingers in my ears and go, no, 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 no. Like when people try to tell me things about the data, because this format is incredible. And I don't think 17 Lands can ruin it. And I mean that with all love, 17 Lands users and programmers. This format will stand the test of time and the hefty weight of the 17 Lands data. It can carry it all on its shoulders. It's living up to the test.
Well, speaking of time, let's get 50 minutes on the clock and start out with point number 1. This format starts on turn 1 by playing an ETB tapped land.
Got him.
Get ready for a much slower format. There are not 1-drops abound. There aren't even really good cards abound.
No, there are not. Well, there are, but they all cost 3 different colors of mana.
Yeah, they all cost 3 different colors of mana and 6 mana to unmorph, etc. It was astonishing, really, looking at how far Limited has come, or just whatever, design philosophy changing, just pouring, and as we do for these 50 Takes episodes, I just pull up the full visual card image gallery and just go over it again and again and again, trying to remind myself of things. And one of the things I was like, these 1-drops leave a bit to be desired. I was like, how are we triggering raid on turn 2? Like,
is that your 0-4? You're attacking with your 0-4 disowned ancestor, or whatever the card's called?
Yes. Yeah, exactly. So just get ready. Not to say, again, not like games in Lost Caverns of Ixalan can't go long. Games, there are certainly, I remember, and we'll talk about them, 2-color assertive decks in this format that like really can punish slower decks. I'm not saying that can't happen. I'm just saying get ready to slow down, pump the brakes a little bit.
Yeah, the main rules is it's a little like StarCraft No Rush Magic. Like a lot of games are tap land, turn 3 morph.
Yes.
Like I think that is the standard play pattern for the format. And then aggro decks buck that trend by playing like a 2-mana 2/1 that can attack into a 2/2 morph,
Yeah.
But yeah, this take got me real good when you added to our 50 takes. I was like, format starts on turn 1. What? Number 2, Cons is a tricolored format based around the 5 wedges that share enemy-colored pairs. So we've got Abzan, white, black, green, that is centered around Outlast. And Outlast is a mechanic that your creature can pay whatever the Outlast cost is and tap itself at sorcery speed to put a +1/+1 counter on it. And then the Outlast creatures all give bonuses to other creatures that have +1/+1 counters. They might grant First Strike or Flying or a Lifelink or whatever.
Then we have Jeskai, which is blue, white, red. And if you can believe it, keyword here is prowess, which was then evergreened and then unevergreened, I believe.
Wait, it's been
Like,
unevergreened?
I believe so, yeah.
Isn't that the antithesis of what evergreen means?
That's what I'm saying. They can do it. They can do whatever they want. But yeah, this was prowess. So whenever you cast a non-creature spell, the creature gets +1/+1 until end of turn.
Next up, we've got Sultai, which is blue, black, green, and it's centered around Delve, which is, if you've played any Vintage Cube, a very powerful mechanic. So we've got a card like Treasure Cruise, for example, 7 and a blue to draw 3 cards, but it's got Delve. So for each card you exile from your graveyard, when a card has Delve, when you cast it, it costs 1 less to cast.
Yeah. Next up, we have Teamer, which is blue, green, red, and that is Ferocious. It's a 4 power matters mechanic.
And then lastly, we've got Mardu, which is red, black, and white, and it is centered around Raid, which is giving your creature some sort of an ability, or cards with Raid some sort of an ability if you've attacked your opponent that turn. And so Mardu is all about attacking, got a bit of a go wide, tokens, pump sub-theme there.
If you ever needed to be reminded to play your spells post-combat, the Mardu Raid deck is for you. Number 3.
We'll train some good muscle memory.
Number 3, Morph in Cons is one of the GOAT mechanics. And I think a mechanic with a pretty steep learning curve, right? Because you're going to have a checklist. I would say if you're playing on your computer and not like your phone or your iPad or whatever, that you might want to have up just a list of morphs and the rares. Usually I'm like, just focus on the commons and uncommons. You're going to want to focus on the rares as well because they'll get you.
I don't know about that so much. I think you're generally good with the commons and uncommons, and you're just fine. If your opponent has a rare, you get blown out a little bit. It's okay.
All right. And something to know if you've never played with Morph. So Morph lets you play a creature face down as a 3-mana 2/2, and then you can flip it up for its Morph cost at any time. And it happens faster than instant speed. So it's not like I paid the Morph cost and you go, oh, I'll give your thing -2/2 in response. Nope. It flips up faster than that. It just happens.
Yes. Number 4, no creature in the set can ambush or eat a 2/2 for less than 5 mana. So there's kind of this rule when you're tussling with morphs. So let's say like I attack my 2/2 morph into your 2/2 morph. If we both have less than 5 mana, the worst thing that's going to happen is our morphs trade. Yes. One of them is not going to eat the other, or maybe they bounce off each other. Like maybe you have an 0/5 and mine turns into a 3/2 or something. Mm-hmm. But you can't eat a morph for less than 5 mana. But let's say I have 4 mana as a morph player with my 2/2, and you as the defending player have a morph and you have 5 mana untapped, and I attack my morph into yours and you flip yours. If your morph cost is 5 mana, you have the ability to potentially eat my morph creature.
Yeah, so you just want to be aware of the amount of mana your opponent has up and just know that, okay, I safely can't get blown out for less than 5 mana, but once they hit 5 mana, all bets are off. Number 5, Cons is an 18 land format. And that's because being the first person to hit 5 mana to threaten to win the Morph Wars is a huge deal. And I mean, you could even go back a couple turns and just say, you can't miss your 3rd land drop.
Right, because then you can't play your Morph. Yeah, you need to hit your 3rd land drop too.
So it's just kind of there's, some exceptions in these like 2-color streamlined aggro decks. Maybe you can shave a land or whatever, but your default really should be 18 lands. And I'll be curious to see, maybe there'll be some fudging with that with the hand smoother on Arena, but I'm going to go in 18 lands, guns a-blazing.
I am also going in 18 lands, guns blazing. It just feels like Dominaria. That format felt like if you missed your 5th land drop, you just lost original Dominaria. And Cons is a very similar feeling. If you've got 4 lands or 3 lands and your opponent's on 5, like they just can bully you. It's like having the big stack at the poker table or whatever.
Yeah. Ooh, look at you.
Yeah, I got poker references. And number 6, it's ideal to start your draft in 2 enemy colors so that you can hashtag delay the decision about which clan to commit to. So, for example, if you start white-black, which is an enemy-colored pair, you can either end up in Mardu, red-black-white, or Abzan, white-black-green.
Yeah, same with blue-red, lets you pivot either between Jeskai or Teamer. Whereas if you're drafting blue-white, you're basically just drafting Jeskai. Like, you can't pivot into any other 3-color wedge.
Yes, it's very tough. Blue-green can go Sultai or Teamer. Green-black can go Sultai or Abzan, and white-red can go Jeskai or Mardu.
Yeah, so really important that you know as you're starting to draft, you go into a color or you're taking a 2-color card to start, which actually isn't as committing because there's so many 3-color cards in the format. Just be aware that you want to stick in that enemy color pair rather
Well,
than an
and
allied.
Well, and also just going back to drafting with preferences, like so much of what you do early in the draft, like lets you have some agency over where you want to end up. Like even the single starting color you choose, right? If you choose a blue card and you want to play that blue card, you're almost not going to be able to go Mardu or Abzan, right? So like
Yeah.
there's already even before you get to an enemy color, like a certain single color is going to open up certain enemy colors for you, which will then let you pivot into certain clans. But there's just a lot of planning that goes into the draft process in this format.
Yes. And speaking of 2 colors, number 7, the best 2-color decks were white black warriors and blue green morphs, with blue red not far behind. These 2 decks are what I remember the most about Cons of Tarkir. I remember Black White Warrior Beatdown. So there's like 2 uncommons, like Chief of the Scale and Chief of the Edge, which are black white respectively. One's a 2/3, one's a 3/2, and they give your warriors +0, +1, or +1, +0. And then blue green morphs. There's a card we'll talk about later called Secret Plans. But blue green morphs is sort of a blue green XXX morphs, like blue green 5-color morphs. Is what those 2 decks are what I remember about the format.
But it doesn't have to either. You can also play blue green morphs as blue green 2-color beatdown too. I think
Yeah, that's the
there's a blue green beatdown deck that I love.
That's the Ben Werney special. That's what I like. You opened my eyes to this. I'd never seen this kind of deck before where you just play derpy blue and green 2-mana 2/1s and then Alpine Grizzly and then leverage your removal spells and just crush your opponent's dreams.
Yeah, that's very good. And also the weird thing about white black warriors, so it's an aggro deck, but the chieftain that raises the toughness, the +0/+1 chieftain is much better because it turns your things into a 2/3, which
Right.
means they can attack into morphs. Like that one's actually better as an offensive threat than the +1/+0 one in some ways, because when your warriors all get plus power, they're still trading with your opponent's morphs. And secret plans similarly turns your morphs into 2/3s, which is just incredible because your
Yeah.
morphs can attack into your opponent's morphs, and then they have to get into double block situations with their morphs. Both of those things are just out of control good.
Yeah. So the other 3 enemy color decks, there's blue red spells, right, for the prowess life. There's green black toughness matters. We'll talk about that in a little bit. And red white aggro. There's 2 sort of go wide payoffs. There's trumpet blast, +2/+0 to your team, and rush of battle, which is 3 and a white for a sorcery. Creatures you control get +2/+1 until end of turn. Warrior creatures you control gain lifelink until end of turn. You are never racing a black white opponent or a red white opponent who casts Rush of Battle.
No, you are not. Number 8, it's possible to even play a 2-color allied color pair, but it requires a deep knowledge of the format and which commons really make the deck tick. So if you're new to cons, I would start by assuming you should start in an enemy color pair, but if you're an advanced cons drafter, feel free to go after that blue-white, prowess aggro deck.
This feels like, like back in like those guild sets, like Return to Ravnica, when people would try to make the off guild decks work.
Yeah. But
This
it
feels
actually does in cons. Cons is so good. I will not have you slander cons. This format is standing up to the data. It's happening. Blue
okay.
white prowess is a thing. I'm telling you, blue white is going to be up, up, up
Stonks.
in that win percentage. It's going to be less played. Super high win rate. That's my 17 lands take pre-format data.
There we go. We got it on air. Number 9, ending up in 4 colors with a base 2-color enemy pair is also an option, right? So base blue green, touching black for some Sultai cards, and splashing red for some Teamer cards. So, but it's still centered around a 2-color deck and centered around that enemy 2-color deck. You can't really do that sort of pivoting if it's blue white.
Yes. Number 10, speaking along those lines, morphs let you be slightly more aggressive with your splashes because at worst, you could play them as a 3-mana 2/2, which was kind of worth the card in Cons of Tarkir. Like that's the era, that's the good clean magic that we're playing. 3-mana 2/2s just jamming into each other. But, let's say you have like just a couple chances to cast your bomb rare. Like worst case, you can play it as a 3-mana 2/2 if it's got morph.
Yeah. Number 11, 5-color control, speaking my language here, was also a very real deck if your pod isn't snapping up the lands too aggressively. So there was like conventional wisdom that you wanted about like 3 lands from each pack to minimum end up with 9. And we should talk about what those lands are. So there's the cycle of ETB tapped gain lands at common. And they're not like land per slot like they were in Kaldheim, right? They're just actual commons in the packs.
Yes, so you can have multiple per pack or whatever. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And then there's a cycle of the wedge land. So they enter the battlefield tapped, and then they tap for one of the colors of those 3 wedges. So Abzan taps for white, black, green, whatever.
Those are uncommon,
those
and
are
those lands
uncommon.
are incredible in the format.
So one of the strategies was you just take all the duels that you see in pack 1 and then just play all your best cards pack 2 or 3.
Because good cards are going to go late, right? Because in packs 2 and packs 3, people have settled into their respective, enemy colored pair or their respective clan. And then if nobody's drafting Abzan and you have the ability to cast Abzan cards, you're going to get good cards late. And weird things will happen in pack 3 like that, where maybe your table doesn't even have a multicolored drafter, and like nobody is very obviously Teamer. There's busted Teamer rares just like floating around in pack 3. Number 12, for a set with so many lands, the fixing isn't great. I mean, it's good, but it's not great. It's very important as a 3-color deck to be like enemy colored pair base plus splashing another color. Or I guess you could be allied color pair base. But the thing that you miss out on in a wedge by being allied color pair base is there's, in addition to payoffs for each clan, so there's like a common for each clan, and there is an uncommon for each clan. There's rares, but there's a cycle of enemy colored uncommons also, like signpost uncommons that are enemy colored. So there's like Kindred Invocation is a black-green uncommon that lets you make an XX compared to the toughness of your highest toughness creature. You miss out on those cards by being an allied color pair base in your wedge. So it's really important to be enemy colored base plus a splash of your clan cards. Like you don't want to be ideally true on XYZ of your colors where they're all equally weighted.
Correct.
Because you're going to run into some trouble. Not to say that you can't, but then you do, again, need to invest more picks in fixing.
What would you say like a typical mana base might look like? I was trying to think about this. Like what if it like it's like 7-7-3-ish, but not really basics. Like maybe 7-7-2, 2 dual lands, something like that. Like
no, I think it's better than that. But that reminded me, that's part of the reason it was an 18 land format, because oftentimes you needed that extra land for your sources.
Yes.
I think ideally you want it minimum 8. I mean, similar to a normal mana base, you want 8 of your main colors at a minimum. And it was possible to be better depending on, what sort of duels you got. And that was also a benefit to reading which clan was open, was that if you were the only drafter in your clan, you're more likely to get those allied color paired duels, because the allied color pair ones are significantly less good than the enemy color paired ones early on, because they don't go in as many archetypes. And then if your wedge is open, you're going to get the lands a little bit later. So I think the mana bases are better than that if you're trying to make them better, right? If you're investing picks in those dual lands. Well, I would say like 9-8, 4 or 5. Like oftentimes you're able to get up to at least 5 sources of your splash color. And if you're not splashing, I think you can really do that on the full 3-color deck.
Sorry, when I was saying like 7-7-3 or whatever, I was trying to count like basic, so really like 7-7-2, 2 duels, something like that. Not thinking about like actual number of sources. Yes, you still want at least 8 sources of your 2 base colors. I agree with that. And the reason that we're saying, it's a set with so many lands, the fixing isn't great, it's kind of partially because fixing is an archetype. Like someone or multiple people in theory are snapping up lands aggressively, I think, right? So there's the 5 clans, but then there is this 5-color deck as well. And I think that sort of puts a pinch on the lands and fixing that everybody else can take.
Yes, I would say for a non-4 or 5-color deck, you should be aiming for 3 to 5 duels that help you fix your mana still.
Yeah. Number 13, getting on board with a 2-drop makes you fairly significantly ahead if your opponent's first play is a turn 3 morph. The Ben Werney special.
The Ben Werney special. There is no better feeling in this format than getting on board on turn 2. Because your opponent all of a sudden is like, oh my God, I'm so far behind. If they're planning on like, turn 3 morph, turn 4 morph, turn 5 flip a morph or something, like you can put your opponent on the back foot in a hurry.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it brings us to point number 14.
Number 14, Wetland Sandbar has keyword crappy. I love this card so much in this format. It's 1 and a blue for a 2/1. Vanilla. That's it. And it's
With
a
a
playable
paragraph of flavor
the
text.
paragraph of flavor text, and the keyword crappy is like nobody wants to trade with it. So it
Yes.
just keeps like getting in for damage over and over because your opponent's morphs are like this super good uncommon and this super good rare, and they don't want to trade with Wetland Sandbar, but then they end up bleeding like 8 to 10 damage from your Wetland Sandbar, and you can kind of close the game out. Like cards like that are way more playable than you would think. Not that like you should be first picking Wetland Sandbar, but there's an archetype that wants to use a 2 mana 2/1.
Yeah, there's Wetland Sandbar, and then there's Highland Game, which is 1 and a green for a 2/1. When it dies, you gain 2 life. And those two cards are just the bread and butter of the 2-drop slot in this blue-green aggro deck.
Well, Highland Game is even better because your opponents are like, I don't want to trade with it and give them the 2 life. Like, 2 life doesn't matter. Everybody has
Yeah.
infinite life in this format, thanks to the gain lands.
Number 15, the official, wink wink official, Lords of Limited power rankings for the top 5 commons overall. Kind of cheating a little bit here. Number 1, enemy colored dual lands.
Number 2, Feet of Resistance. 1 and a white for the instant. Put a +1/+1 counter on the creature and give it protection from the color of your choice until end of turn. Also, just has synergy with all the Abzan Outlast stuff. Feet of Resistance is incredible in this format.
So, real talk here. Will you be like, how much money would you bet that Feet of Resistance is the top common overall by game and hand win rate?
I would bet large sums of money.
Yeah, that's how I feel too. But this is another one of the things I really remember is Feet of Resistance is incredible in the format. And part of that, as we'll get to later, is because the removal is atrocious. Some of the removal, not atrocious. Number 3, Debilitating Injury. This is 1 and a black for an enchantment. Enchanted creature gets -2/-2, 2 mana to kill your morph. It's really good. You're like, why am I paying an extra mana for deadweight? Because it kills morphs.
Well, except when your opponent flips it for free by revealing a card in an 0/5 or sometime. Like, you can get punished by just willy-nilly firing off your debilitating injuries. But yes, that is generally its purpose is to. But there's also like a guessing game if you don't know which of your opponent's morphs is good.
I know.
Like, do you snap off the debilitating injury on the first one they played, assuming that's their best one? Or do you, like, I think my go-to move was their second one because I thought they were trying to bait me with their first one.
Yeah.
Like, people play their
we have a point later about morph bluffs. We'll talk about that.
Number 4. This is certainly not in the top 5 commons overall, but it is there in my heart. I love this card. Savage Punch, 1 and a green, sorcery. Target creature fights another target creature, but if your creature is ferocious, if it had 4 power or more, it gets +2/+2 before they fight. The old Alpine Grizzly, 2 and a green, 4/2 plus Savage Punch wombo combo. Love that in this format.
Spoiling future points again. And then number 5, ally colored dual lands. And you might think, well, are ally colored dual lands that good? It's yes and no. It's mostly the commons in this set are they're cute. I'll say. I gotta choose my words carefully. Ben's gonna give me a little bit of a death stare here, but the commons in this format leave a little bit to be desired.
Yeah, we've got a preemptive Golden Egg Award, though. Number 16, Golden Egg Award goes to a card that maybe should be in the top 5 commons overall.
I think so.
Mardu Horde Chief. This is 2 and a white for a 2/3. And if you attacked before playing this, it comes along with a 1/1 friend. There is no more demoralizing card to play against than your opponent raiding in a Mardu Horde Chief on turn 3. It is the OG Chimney Rabble.
Yeah, I mean, there's no colorless card that's going to fit this description. And so I was trying to think of a card that's like good in every facet. And this really is. And like you said, maybe that means it's just too good. Like, is this just going to be White's second best common and one of the top 5 commons in the set? I could definitely see it because you keep talking about how things match up against morphs. And so not only can this attack into morphs, it benefits from 2-drop attack, get the raid trigger, play this on 3, but also unrated. It's just a 3 mana 2/3 that trades with that eats morphs.
Or that blanks morphs, like your opponent can't attack into you. Yeah.
Number 17, Woolly Loxodon is king of the morphs at common. This is 6 and a green for a 6/7, but it has morph for 5 and a green. And that's often what you get. Some of the rares I think are slightly different. So you get a bonus because sometimes you'll get a bonus when creatures unmorph. But you'll often get a discount from their actual mana value to their morph cost. And that's what you get with Woolly Loxodon. So you get a 6 mana 6/7, which is keyword large.
It is huge. It will eat most other morphs. So like if you're jamming a morph into your opponent's morph and you both flip, if they don't have a rare, like Woolly Loxodon is probably winning the fight most of the time.
Correct.
Number 18, 5 toughness is a magic number for morph battles in the format. There's only a small list of common morphs that can punch through 5 toughness when you flip them up. So we've got the aforementioned Woolly Loxodon. We've got Canyon Lurkers, which morphs for 3 and a red into a 5/2, which seems like that might break the, like, you know, your morphs trading with each other rule, but it'll still trade with a 2/2 morph then, right? But the nice thing is it can punch through. There's a couple 0/5 walls or 0/5 ways to kind of gum up the ground.
And then there's Snowhorn Rider, which is the common Teamer creature, 3 green, blue, red for a 5/5 trample with morph for 2 and Teamer.
And there's also the Jeskai one, which is a Freet Weapon Master. It's 3 and Jeskai for a 4/3 first strike. And when you morph it for 2 blue, red, white, whenever it is a turn face up, another target creature you control gets +3/+0 until end of turn. So you attack with another creature and then flip up your Freet Weapon Master to pump that creature and punch through.
Number 19, we just talked about it, but Alpine Grizzly plus Savage Punch is a lifestyle. Alpine Grizzly, 2 and a green for a 4/2. Again, flavor text, just pure vanilla 4/2. And then Savage Punch.
Clean magic.
Good clean magic. But this is just so good in this blue-green, like subverting the format's expectations deck, because you just play like Derpy 2/1 on 2, Alpine Grizzly on 3, and then Savage Punch a morph, attack with a 6/4.
And a 2/1.
And a 2/1. And then play another 2/1.
And then, yes. And then, like, if you have another Savage Punch, the game is just over.
The game's over.
The deck clocks so fast against the decks that are like morph.
Yeah.
Number 20, Rakshasa's Secret was secretly good for most of the format. It says 2 and a black for a sorcery. Target opponent discards 2 cards. Put the top 2 cards of your library into your graveyard.
Yeah, so the thing about this is it's a 2-for-1 that also puts 3 cards in your bin for Delve, which is very important. Like a lot of the Delve fuel, and we'll talk about this when we get to Delve in a little bit, but there's a tricky choke point for Delve where like you can't have oops all Delve cards, and you need ways to fuel the few Delve cards that you're going to have, right? And so a lot of them are kind of clunky. There's like Scout the Borders, just 2 and a green. Look at the top 5. You can pick a creature or a land, and then the rest go in the bin. So yeah, that puts 5 cards, right, including Scout the Borders plus the other 4 cards into your graveyard. But you're only getting, that's only a 1-for-1 for 3 mana. This is 4 mana, but you're getting that 2-for-1 plus 3 cards to fuel Delve. I think this is a really good shout for an underrated card.
Well, and lands mattered too. Like most of the time, you're not happy hitting lands with your Mind Rot, but like so much of the late game was like you need to get to 5 lands. So like it hurts binning lands off Rakshasa's Secret too. And the format is slow enough that you don't get as punished as usual for, you know, spending 3 mana to affect your opponent's hand and not the board, you know?
Right. Number 21, Goblin Slide is a niche build around for a controlling Jeskai deck. This is 2 and a red for an enchantment. Whenever you cast a non-creature spell, you can pay 1. If you do, put a 1/1 red goblin creature token with haste onto the battlefield. You know who I'm looking to make this card work in the coming weeks.
LSV.
Yeah.
Like, absolutely. I assume both of you and I watched the CFP video of him popping off with Goblin Slide. It was just a different time. Happier times, simpler times.
Yeah.
LSV, please draft some Goblin Slides and make some videos for us on your new YouTube channel.
Pry yourself away from Vintage Cube for a day or two and give us some Goblin Slide tech. But yeah, a sweet card. Not for the faint of heart, I would say.
No, advanced build around, but if you get there, can do some dumb things.
Yeah.
I'm so excited for this format. Number 22, Secret Plans. One of the best uncommons in the set. Your morphs win combat and are all 2-for-1. So this is blue-green for an enchantment. Face down creatures you control get +0/+1. And whenever a permanent you control is turned face up, you draw a card.
No better feeling than a turn 2 Secret Plans in the format, for my money.
Yeah, it's a strong card.
Number 23, flipping morphs into open mana from your opponent is a recipe for a disaster. Tempo blowouts are real in Cons of Tarkir. And not because, like, again, the removal isn't great. But there is like a bounce spell, right? What's it called? Like Force Away is 1 and a blue, bounce a thing.
Yeah.
And if you have Ferocious, you get to draw a card, discard a card.
Yeah, when your opponent spends 5 or 6 mana to flip their morph and you spend 2 mana to return it to their hand,
Yeah.
and then they have to play another 3 mana to play it as a 2/2 and another 6 mana to flip it up, like, it's so hard to recover from that.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it's a real, there is a lot of who blinks first in this format, I would say, with unflipping morphs, with firing off removal, because the reverse happens too, right? So you can blow someone out by I flip up my morph and then you kill it or bounce it or whatever. But the reverse can happen where you're like, I'm going to kill your thing or bounce it. And you go, oh, I unflip it. This has
And it's
hexproof
this
now.
other thing. Yes,
Yeah.
yeah.
So
Yeah.
there's a real like, yeah, I don't know, like who's going to act first in the format.
Number 24, Trail of Mystery is a great reason to go 5-color morphs. This is a sweet build-around enchantment, 1 and a green, and whenever a face-down creature enters the battlefield under your control, you can search your library for a basic land card, reveal it, put it in your hand, then shuffle your library. And whenever a permanent you control is turned face up, if it's a creature, it gets +2/+2 until end of turn.
I have many fond memories of this card. This is the card no other rare do I want to open more than Trail of Mystery. But I also remember, because you are led to a 5-color control deck, a 5-color morph deck, snapping up as many duels and tri-lands as you can, you can run out of basics.
You can run out of basics for sure.
So you're going to want to maybe just be aware of that, chalk your deck a little bit, pad it a little bit more with some basic lands so you don't miss on your Trail of Mystery after your 4th morph creature or whatever.
The classic fail to find.
That's right. Number 25, there is a choke point on the number of delve cards you actually wanted in your deck, right? The first 2 or 3 are super important. And then there are serious diminishing returns after that because they all, I mean, they're powerful. Most of them are powerful at common or uncommon, but they really eat a chunk of your graveyard. You know, it's sort of like, I don't know, it's not quite like Escape from Theros Beyond Death, because you really do need to fuel them. You can't just like throw a couple delve cards in whatever deck, right? You need to have a little bit of fuel, I think, to really feel good about them.
Yeah, your first delve card, I think, is very important to any deck. And then once you're getting into the 3 range, then you need to be doing a little work. Yeah. Number 26, we have the official Wink Wink Lords of Limited Delve common and uncommon power rankings. Number 1, I feel pretty solid about Murderous Cut. This is 4 and a black for the instant. Destroy target creature, and it's got Delve.
Yeah, I pulled up the list. There's 8 of them. I felt very confident about putting Murderous Cut at number 1, and I feel not at all confident about the rest of this order. I noticed that you did not tweak this at all, so I'll just lay my opinions bare here. Number 2, Treasure Cruise, 7 and a blue, draw 3 cards.
Number 3, Hooting Mandrills, the 4/4 trample for 5 and a green.
Then Dead Drop. I'm curious what your memory of this card is. 9 and a black for a sorcery. Target player sacrifices 2 creatures. I remember wanting this to be bad, and it just like owning me so many times.
My memory of this is that it was quite variably good depending on the situation, but that it was always insane for Reed Duke. Like every draft video I watched of Reed, Dead Drop was just incredible for him.
Yeah.
That is my memory of Dead Drop. Number 5, Set Adrift, 5 and a blue for the sorcery with Delve. Put target non-land permanent on top of its owner's library. I'm a little lower on, I think. Force Away does
only ways to 1-for-1 cheaply with your opponent's creatures.
Force Away did a similar thing at common without a similar effect without eating your graveyard.
Yeah, that's fair. Sultai Scavenger is next. This is 5 and a black for a 3/3 flyer.
Love that card. Become Immense. This card ends some games. 5 and a green for the instant with Delve. Target creature gets +6/+6 until end of turn.
And last and certainly least, Shambling Attendants. 7 and a black for a 3/5 Death Touch. Feel pretty confident that is the worst one.
I don't feel confident, but I just don't remember.
Oh, okay. All right. Yeah. I'll say I'm confident. Number 27, Archer's Parapet is excellent at slowing the game down. This is 1 and a green. Let me see if I can remember this. 1 and a green for an 0/5, and you pay 1 and a black, tap it. Target opponent loses a life, or deals the damage to them.
Yeah, nailed it.
Yeah. Talk to me about this. What are we doing here with this 2-mana 0/5?
It blocks for days. Like, it blocks all of the derpy warriors that are attacking you on the ground. It blanks your opponent's morphs until they hit that magic 5 mana mark. You're not that necessarily into the ability of pinging, but it's relevant late in the game sometimes. But most importantly, when you combine this with Kintry Invocation, which is the black-green sorcery, Kintry Invocation gives you a 5/5. So this is a staple of the black-green Toughness Matters archetype.
Correct.
Number 28, be aware of the cycle of morphs that flip for free by revealing a card instead of a mana cost that shares a color with them.
So first up, we have Dragon's Eye Savants. This is 1 and a blue for an 0/6. And these all unmorph by revealing a card of the same color as this card from your hand. So morph, reveal a blue card in your hand. And then when Dragon's Eye Savants is turned face up, you get to look at target opponent's hand. Of course, Ben loves this. Warm, fuzzy feeling. See what's coming.
Well, but it actually matters in the format too because of morphs. Like, if you see your opponent's got a couple good morphs in hand, you know what they are. Like, Dragon's Eye Savants is by far the best card of this cycle. Like, I think not close to close.
Disagree.
Wow.
I'm a Ruth stan.
You're a Ruth stan, huh?
Yeah.
Ruth is number 2 for me. Ruth is number 2 on the list. This is black for a 1/1 death touch, and you can morph by revealing a black card in your hand. And when Ruth is turned face up, target player loses 2 life. But those two certainly are the top 2. I feel very strongly that Dragon's Eye Savants is better than Ruth.
Yeah, because you think that looking at your opponent's hand is like 2 cards.
It's a gold mine.
Horde Ambushers, the red one. This is 1 and a red for a 2/2. When it blocks, it deals a damage to you. And when it's turned face up, target creature can't block this turn.
Yeah, and the last 2 are not like sort of whatever. Teamer Charger, Watcher the Roost. I mean, they're cards, but the main 2 to watch out for are Dragon's Eye Savants and Ruth the Ripper. Those are the ones that have the most implications for outplaying your opponent or getting outplayed.
You just called Ruthless Ripper Ruth the Ripper, and I now will only call it Ruth the Ripper.
Yeah, Ruth the Ripper. That was not a slip of the tongue.
I'd never heard that before.
Yeah, Ruth the Ripper.
Number 29, sweepers and massive board affecting spells abound in Khans of Tarkir. Overextend with caution. So got to shout a couple cards here. First up is Dune Blast, 4 white, black, green for a sorcery. Choose up to 1 creature. Destroy the rest. Hey, you want to keep your best creature? You think what's it called? Unstable Glyph Bridge or whatever is kind of backbreaking. Meet Dune Blast.
I do. Unstable Glyph Bridge is more egregious than Dune Blast, just because of the context of the format and what the format incentivizes.
Because one card is in a format you don't like, and one card is in a format you have rose-colored glasses for.
No, that is wow. Why are you hating on KTK? This is not a good look for the podcast.
Just bullying you. That's all. That's all.
Not a good look for the podcast. But yeah, we don't need to get into it. Anyway, Dune Blast is a rare. I'm okay with. They have to get to 7 mana. Like, you can kind of mitigate the damage a little bit. And Hostilities is also another tough one. This is 3 white, white for a sorcery. Destroy all creatures and all permanents attached to creatures.
And then there's more than just like sweeper effect. So here's an example. There's 1,000 Winds, 4 blue, blue for a 5/6 flyer. It has morph for 5 blue, blue. And when it's turned face up, you return all other tapped creatures to their owner's hands. It's a pretty big blowout potential here with 1,000 Winds. Sometimes doesn't do anything, and it's just a 5/6 flyer. Sometimes it's a blowout. And there's more cards like this that like have a big effect when flipped up, or there's a blue rare Icy Blast that like taps a bunch of stuff down, and if you have Ferocious, it keeps them tapped for a turn. Like, there's some big impactful spells.
Big impactful spells for sure. Number 30, despite those big impactful spells, individual removal, fairly clunky. So we've got Throttle, which is 4 and a black for an instant. Target creature gets -4/-4 until end of turn. You wrote more like Throttle in our show notes.
Yeah.
I remember drafting this format with my oldest brother, Nick, and just like being like, yeah, Throttle. Like, probably because we were overvaluing removal a little bit back in the day, but like, man, you were signing up to pay 5 mana to kill something at instant speed.
But you don't always kill something. That's the crazy thing.
Yeah, I know.
It's like the 5 mana black removal spell that doesn't catch all.
Yeah,
you gotta pay. You want to catch all? You got to pay 6. You got to get Right of the Serpent, 4 black, black, sorcery speed, destroy target creature. Ooh, ready for this bonus? If that creature had a +1/+1 counter on it, you get a 1/1 green snake creature token.
Yeah, I mean, that was fine as a one of that you didn't pick very highly. Not a great card. Then we've got Swift Kick. 3 in a red for an instant. Target creature you control gets +1/+0 until end of turn. It fights. Not even does damage equal to its power. It fights.
Say,
Target creature you don't control.
four
Good clean
mana.
magic. Good clean magic.
4-mana fight spell doesn't pump toughness. Incredible. This is just one of the many reasons Feat of Resistance is so good. That's the 1 in a white protection spell that adds a counter. You just blow people out. You sort of like, it's kind of, you can think of prowess triggers also as kind of being like giving you a Feat of Resistance, that you get to like pump stuff for cheaper, because the removal is, other than, there's Feat of Resistance, there's debilitating injury, there isn't great ways to interact beyond that.
Yeah.
Number 31, which is a shame because boy howdy, are there some bombs in this set. Let's talk about a couple rares here. High Sentinels of Erishin, 3 in a white for a 3/4 flyer. So 4 mana, 3/4 flyer. It gets +1/+1 for each creature you control with a +1/+1 counter on it. And you can pay 3 in a white to put a +1/+1 counter on target creature.
I don't know what you're complaining about. This dies to throttle, straight up. We've also got Sagu Mauler, 3 mana for the morph, 2/2. And then when you flip it up, it's a 6/6 hexproof trample for 6 mana for blue-green. And it morphs for 3 blue-green. Card is an absolute beating.
And just card every deck wants. Probably best back one, pick one in the set. Ghost Fireblade, single mana artifact equipment. Equipped creature gets +2/+2. Equip cost of 3. But its equipability costs 2 less to activate if it targets a colorless creature. Are there any colorless creatures in the format, Ben?
A few running around, yeah. Some morphs.
Every single morph is colorless. So this is 1 mana to cast, 1 mana to equip to your morphs to give them +2/+2.
Number 32, the Outlast deck, which was Abzan colored, required patience and knowing which creatures to keep untapped. So you couldn't just like outlast your whole team or you were going to get cracked back for 1,000,000 damage, right?
Yeah.
So like kind of anticipating some removal from your opponent. And there's just a lot of tricky stuff you could do with instant speed +1/+1 counters as the Outlast deck as well. Like, putting a +1/+1 counter on your thing to give your team first strike when your opponent's not expecting it, or reach when your opponent's not expecting it. Combat tricks that gave +1/+1 counters were really strong in the Outlast deck.
Well, and also leveraging your life total or using your life total to be able to be like, okay, I'm going to I recognize I'm going to take a hit this turn so I can outlast to get stuff up to being able to block or being able to block through a trick or a removal spell, whatever. Like there's just a lot of, you really have to be anticipating what your opponent's going to do and thinking about a couple turns ahead as you're like, okay, I'll outlast this one, leave this one back. But am I okay to trade off? Whatever. You just got to ask yourself a lot of questions with that deck. Number 33, the +1/+1 counter rares or traps. Retribution of the Ancients, single black enchantment. Pay black, remove X +1/+1 counters from among creatures you control. Target creature gets -X until end of turn. You might think, oh, I can outlast a bunch and then I can turn those counters into removal spells. No. You don't have time for that.
Hardened Scales, also green for the enchantment. If 1 or more +1/+1 counters will be placed on creatures you control, you get that many +1 instead. Despite it being a modern powerhouse, Hardened Scale does not quite get there in limited as a build around.
Correct.
Number 34, dropping +1/+1 counters outside of Outlast still gave the Outlast bonuses. This is what we were referencing with combat tricks that, +1/+1 counters. For example, if you have an Abzan Falconer that's 2 and white for a 2/3 that gives your team flying, if you drop a +1/+1 counter on that with Outlasting, then all of a sudden your whole team has flying for a lethal strike, or reach to ambush your opponent's flyers, or first strike to crush them in combat on your Einok Bondkin, whatever. There was just a lot of tricky plays you could make as the Outlast deck.
Number 35, the Imperial Oath Award for clunky-looking overperformer goes to Abzan Guide. 3 white, black, green for a 4/4 with lifelink and has a morph cost of 2 white, black, green. This is a chonker.
Chonker that slows the game down. Like if your opponent's beating you down, you flip this up, gain 4 life, eat a creature, like game is all of a sudden stable Mabel.
Yeah, for sure.
Number 36, speaking of Abzan Guide, the official Common Wedge Morph Power Rankings. This is interesting. I was actually just thinking about this while we were talking about that take.
You forgot about official Wink Wink.
Oh, excuse me. The official Wink Wink.
Okay, so we've
Number
got
one, we've got Abzan Guide.
Number 2, Snowhorn Rider. This is the Teamer, 6 mana, 5/5 Trampler.
I think that would be my number one. And then in number 3, we've got...
I will lay money that Abzan Guide has a higher game in hand win rate than Snowhorn Rider.
Sure, but that's not a fair bet because Abzan's better than Teamer. Like, why would I take that bet? But I think when used appropriately, Snowhorn Rider is stronger than Abzan Guide.
Unbelievable.
But it's never going to be higher in the game in hand's win rate.
Okay.
So
nobody
will ever be able to prove me wrong.
So you admit it.
In number 3, we've got Efreet Weapon Master. That's the Jeskai 4/3 first strike.
And I think we're going to get some pushback here. We have a number 4, Abomination of Gadul. This is the Sultai 1/3 black, green, blue for a 3/4 flyer. The morph cost is 1 less. And whenever Abomination of Gadul deals combat damage to a player, you may draw a card. If you do, discard a card. It's just slow. It's understated. Like, you get to flip up other stuff as like 5/5 trample, 4/4 lifelink. It's just small.
This is the one I think we would get pushback on. I would have this one higher personally. Also in the Wink Wink power rankings. Ponyback Brigade. This is 3 red, white, black for the 2/2. When an ETB is returned face up, put 3 1/1 red goblin creature tokens onto the battlefield, and it's got Morph for 2 and Mardu. This is, of all of these, I think this is the most important to its archetype for the archetype working. Like, if you're trying to go wide, best way to go wide. Ponyback Brigade is a problem.
Wow, my memory of this card was poop soup.
Really?
Poopity doopity soup.
Well, clearly the Wink Wink power rankings are infallible. So
we can both agree on this.
Takes.
We can both agree on this next card, I'm sure. Number 37, Villainous Wealth is a real build around. So this is X, black, green, blue for a sorcery. Target opponent exiles the top X cards of their library. You may cast any number of non-land cards with converted mana cost X or less from among them without paying their mana costs.
It's also mandatory when you resolve this card for like X equals 7 or more to just cackle maniacally like a Disney villain.
Yes.
Just enacted your master plan.
Yes, for sure. Yeah, Villainous Wealth is really sweet.
Number 38, the banners were pieces of fixing you could get fairly late and hoped not to play. So this is a cycle of artifacts that tapped for the 3 colors of their clan, and then you could crack them to draw a card after presumably you had the mana you needed to cast your spells.
Yeah.
Not great.
Not great at all. Number 39, fishy attacks don't always mean they have a trick. They're trying to trigger raid. This is, I think, if you never played with raid before, it's a hard thing to just shift your mindset to, because you'll always be like, wait, why are they attacking their 2/2 into my 2/3?
Just call every time.
You just got to call, especially if they're in Mardu, if they're like in specifically Mardu, but if they're in Jeskai, they can still have, red raid cards or whatever. So you probably just want to call most of the time.
Number 40, speaking of raiding, Raiders Spoils was a house for the Aggro Warriors decks. This is 3 and a black for an enchantment. Creatures you control get +1/+0. And whenever a warrior you control deals combat damage to a player, you can pay 1 life. If you do, draw a card.
Yeah, I have just such fond memories of this card. Honestly, it's mostly unfond because I see it on the other side of the battlefield in my memories, but this card is very powerful. Number 41, Embodiment of Spring is not the fixing you're looking for. Single blue for an 0/3 elemental. You can pay 1 and a green, tap, sack it, search your library for a basic land, put it onto the battlefield, tapped, then shuffle your library. You look at this, you go, I can do this before, do this on turn 1, sack it on turn 2 before I'm, getting the game going with Morph. The problem is it's fixing that already requires 2 colors.
Yeah, it's not great.
This is not good. Do not play this card.
Number 42, the order that you play morphs and the way you choose to engage or not engage them in combat are clues to their power.
This is sort of what you were talking about before of like, what morphs are you playing first? What morph do you play second? Sometimes you can if you're double blocking, like if they attack with a 3/3 and you're going to double block with 2 morphs, do you put the morph, you put your better morph first in the hopes that they just go, they're both morphs, I'll just leave them in the order they do? Or is it a leveling war where you're like, I'm going to put my good morph first and then they're going to switch the order of the blockers,
It's good clean magic.
Good clean magic. In all seriousness, you do want to track if your opponent's just like never engaging one morph in combat or something, or, being a little cagey about, you just want to track that stuff because it'll give you clues to which are their more powerful or less powerful cards.
And presumably they will be numbered somehow in the order they came into the battlefield, right? Like that was true on Magic Online. So you'll know, like, this is the morph my opponent played first. This is their second morph. This is their third morph, so that you can identify which one is which.
Correct. Number 43, Mardu Warshrieker enables some nutty turns. This is 3 in a red for 3/3 at common. And as raid, if you attacked with a creature this turn, when it ETBs, you add red, white, black to your mana pool. So the easy turn to think of with this is just turn 4, I've attacked with my morph, play Warshrieker, use that 3 mana, play another morph. Sometimes if this was like turn 5, you could chain Warshriekers, Warshrieker 1, play another one with the extra mana you have, and then do something. But just like being able to double spell on turn 4 is incredibly powerful in a format that really doesn't start on the board until turn 3 a lot of the time.
Well, and what you mentioned with morphs is important too, because it looks like a Mardu only card, right? But this is just a good red card if you have a reasonable number of morphs in your deck, because like your Jeskai deck, for example, can, attack turn 3 or turn 4, play this, play a morph, and that's just a huge tempo bonus. It's not quite like a Mountain Me deck concede Cedra situation where you're like chaining a bunch of stuff in a row, but it's very good.
It's just such a deep cut for people
who
don't watch our streams.
There's some listeners out there that will appreciate that.
For sure.
Mountain Me deck! Mountain Me deck! Yes! Yes! Let's go! This is the best thing I've ever seen in my entire life! Let's do it! Concede, Cedrus! Number 44, that takes us on to the official Wink Wink Lords of Limited Charm power rankings. In first place, we've got Abzan Charm, white, black, green for an instant. Choose one, exile target creature power 3 or greater. You draw 2 cards and lose 2 life, or you distribute 2 +1/+1 counters among 1 or 2 target creatures.
Number 2, we have Mardu Charm, red, white, black for an instant. Its modes are deal 4 damage to target creature, put 2 1/1 white warrior creature tokens onto the battlefield. They gain first strike until end of turn, eating a morph in combat. Hello. Or target opponent reveals his or her hand. You choose a non-creature, non-land card from it. That player discards their card.
Takes us on to Jeskai Charm, which is blue, red, white. For the instant, you choose one, put target creature on top of its owner's library. This deals 4 damage to target opponent, or creatures you control get +1/+1 and gain lifelink until end of turn.
Oof, that mode is brutal with prowess, because it's like basically giving them +2/+2 and lifelink. Ugh, just got a bad taste in my mouth. Number 4, we've got Teamer Charm, green, blue, red. Its modes are target creature you control get +1/+1 until end of turn. It fights target creature you don't control. Counter target spell unless its controller pays 3, or creatures with power 3 or less can't block this turn.
And bringing up the rear, we've got Sultai Charm. This is black, green, blue for the instant. Destroy target mono-colored creature. Destroy target artifact or enchantment. Draw 2 cards. Discard a card. Definitely feel good about that one in last place.
Yeah. Number 45. Yes, they have Feat of Resistance. No, you can't play around it.
Card is so broken. It's so good. So we were talking about like these 2-color decks. You almost always are white if you're an allied color pair 2-color deck, because white's commons, most of the commons are like less powerful than I think we are used to in modern Magic, but like Feat of Resistance, Mardu Horde Chief, like white can be aggressive combined with other colors and Feat of Resistance. Like there's definitely a white-blue prowess beatdown deck, assuming you get some number of Feat of Resistances.
Correct.
Number 46, Overrun is Jeskai colored this time around. What's Flying Crane Technique do?
3 blue, red, white for an instant. Untap all creatures you control. They gain flying and double strike until end of turn.
Just a sinking feeling looking at this card.
This
card ends games.
Yeah.
And it always feels like they were stolen from you too, despite like Flying Crane Technique just being an excellent Magic card.
Yeah, exactly. Number 47, Abzan Ascendancy is S tier. So there's all these cycles of cards. So there's these Ascendancies at rare, which are these enchantments that are tied to each of the clans. This one is nuts. The rest are definitely not. So Abzan Ascendancy is white, black, green. When it enters the battlefield, you put a +1/+1 counter on each creature you control. And whenever a non-token creature you control dies, you put a 1/1 white spirit creature token with flying onto the battlefield.
Card is excellent. Jeskai Ascendancy is very good, but not close to Abzan Ascendancy.
No.
This is blue, red, white for the enchantment. Whenever you cast a non-creature spell, creatures you control get +1/+1 until end of turn. Untap those creatures. Whenever you cast a non-creature spell, you can draw a card. If you do, discard a card. This has some Goblin Slide potential.
Yeah. I'm more excited to build around Ascendancy than Goblin Slide, but definitely nothing holds a candle to Abzan Ascendancy.
Number 48, Disowned Ancestor. Single black for the 0/4 with Outlast for 1 and a black. Into Kintree Invocation, which is black-green for a sorcery. Put an XX black and green Spirit Warrior creature token onto the battlefield where X is the greatest toughness among creatures you control. Was the dream. Turn 2, 4/4.
You know what's crazy is that turn 2, 4/4 by today's standards, you're like, that's cool.
I beat that.
That's cool, I guess. But this is like, but I worked really hard. I had the 1-drop and into the 2-drop and no tapped lands. So I had my untapped black source, my untapped green source. It's like, yeah, okay, big deal. I can deal with that. Number 49, Arrow Storm means protecting your life total more against red players. This is 3 red for sorcery. Deals 4 damage to target creature or player. If you trigger Raid, it deals 5 damage to that creature or player instead, and the damage can't be prevented. You're gonna die to this card.
Arrow Storm is demoralizing. You're like, okay, I've stabilized.
I'm stabilized. I'm the 3.
Arrow Storm into Arrow Storm. You're dead.
Yeah. So just be aware of that. Like, you may want to trade off more aggressively against red opponents. Certainly if you're playing best of 3 and you've seen this.
Number 50, this format is goated by so many people for a reason. So have fun drafting and playing.
Yeah. I mean, I'm being a bit of a heel this episode, but I'm excited to play this format again.
Yeah, because it's incredible. It would blow my mind if somehow the data said this format were not good. And if you have data takes that are knocking this format, do not at me, please. Do not at me.
You're gonna want to add him, and if he somehow, I'll make sure he sees them. If you want to send them my way, I'll make sure Ben sees them.
I'm gonna be aggressively blocking Cons of Tarkir data tweets.
What are you most looking forward to?
Oh, absolutely! Wetland Sandbar into Alpine Grizzly into
the fun
Savage
police.
Punch.
The fun police of the format.
It's funny, like that is my default nature in this format is to try to do weird stuff like that. But like, I definitely want to open a Villainous Well. Like, I want to do it all. Like, there's this format is a giant sandbox, and I am looking forward to playing in the sand.
I couldn't agree more.
All right. Great place to wrap us up. Thank you, as always, to Salty Pretzels for our intro and outro music. Make sure you give it a listen.
Thanks so much to CoolStuffInc.com for sponsoring this podcast. If you're heading over there for any and all purchases, or you want to buy me 4 copies of Smuggler's Copter for the PT, please use checkout code LOL when you do so to let them know we sent you over there. And more importantly, to get 5% off of anything you purchase. You can find all of our content on our website, lordsoflimited.com. Links to our tier lists. Ben, can people expect a KTK tier list later this week?
They can, now that you brought it up. If you had not, that would not have happened. But I'll get a KTK tier list going. Yeah, that sounds like fun.
We'll have a cons tier list, wink tier list, perhaps, before we actually get our hands on the cards.
Them, yeah.
But we'll have a tier list up on the website. Links to our YouTube channel, our Twitch streams, our merch, courtesy of TeePublic, and of course our episode backlog, all available at lordsoflimited.com.
If you've got any feedback about the show or any questions, shoot us an email at lordsoflimited@gmail.com.
Thanks so much for listening, and we'll catch you next week for another episode of Lords of Limited.
Thanks, everybody. See you later.